Hello, everybody. My name is Regina Cahan. I am Chief Civil, and that's my role here today, really, is just to, first of all, thank the judges here who are going to give this training for you and to welcome you. This is a training on all Zoom civil jury trials. And I want you to realize that this is kind of the new normal for a while at King County Superior Court. It's a natural transition. In June, we did all bench trials by Zoom, as you all probably know. In August, we started Zoom voir dire. And now, because of the pandemic, it's just not safe for us to have in-person jurors. So we have moved to all Zoom jury trials. We've been doing them now for a month or so. I would say we've done about 15 or 10 to 15, and they're going well. So this is our time to train some of you. I just want to give my just complete heartfelt thanks to Judge Keenan, Judge Williams, and Judge Phelps, who have spent a lot of time not only putting this presentation together, but frankly, training the judges in order to do this. Nobody, unless you're a techie, you're not comfortable. And we know that. We aren't either, but guess what? You just got to get with the program and learn it because this is the way your clients are going to have trials. By the time you see this, an order will have gone out that we've extended, and we won't have civil in-person jurors till the end of March. After that, I don't know. None of us know. We will have a huge backlog of criminal cases. So this is probably your way of getting your civil cases done for some time. So I say that so that you can get yourself ready, you can get yourself prepared. My one other couple of things to tell you is everything we're doing these days is electronic and it takes longer. So just please have patience with our staff. And finally, I'm just going to be the bad cop here for 1 minute. Please do not expect our bailiffs to be your tech experts. That's not their jobs. They're doing a phenomenal job, but all of this has put so much more on our bailiffs, and they can't be your helper too. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Judge Phelps. And again, I just thank these three judges tremendously. So thank you.
Thank you, Judge Cahan. Greetings and welcome, everyone. I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to our training sessions today. I want to welcome you to our 4-part training session on all Zoom civil jury trials from pretrial to verdict. Let's talk about what we're going to be covering throughout this series. You've heard from our amazing Chief Judge of Civil, Judge Cahan. My section will be part 1 on what to expect during your pretrial conference, followed by part 2, jury selection with Judge Keenan, and Judge Williams will be covering sections 3 and 4, jury management and lawyer considerations. During my section, pretrials, here's what you can expect that we will cover, and we hope that you will learn. 1, the general purpose of pretrial conferences, what topics are generally covered during a pretrial conference, pretrial conference topics in preparation for virtual jury trial, how to upload exhibits to the clerk's share file system, and other pretrial considerations for the trial court and counsel of record. So what happens at the pretrial conference for jury trial? That also is known as a Zoom trial or an all jury or all virtual trial. Well, here are some of the big things that you can expect that your judge will cover with you. Basically, it's the same thing that you would have expected prior to us adopting an all virtual format. The simple thing is this case ready for trial? You'll be discussing the length of the trial, and this is very important because for cases that are longer than 5 trial days, We generally attempt to give our chief civil judge a heads up that the case will need, possible, if at all possible, a special set with a judge, because a longer trial, generally, we try to pre-assign those, but we can't do that if we aren't, if we haven't had an opportunity to talk to you during pretrial about the length of your trial. It's also important, before I go any further, that you understand that generally now we are trying to hold pretrial conferences for every single civil trial. Generally, you can expect a request. An order will be sent out 6 to 8 weeks before your trial date, in which your assigned trial court for that, or your IC judge at that point, I shouldn't say trial court, your IC judge will ask counsel to appear for a pretrial conference, at which time these topics will be discussed. Also, just like before, they'll be discussing deadlines for exchange of joint statements of evidence, exhibit lists, witness lists, typical trial things. You'll be assigned, each side will be assigned exhibit numbers for trial exhibits. And this is very important, and it's very crucial that all counsel really do pay close attention to the numbers to which the court is assigning for your exhibits, and that you stick to that. As a side note, I just want to point out, often during trials, we will see attorneys attempt to admit something as exhibit number 1A or 1B or page 1 of exhibit 1. It's very important that you understand how our system, as far as the court system, works, and that is that exhibits have to be admitted as whole. We can't take page 6 and admit page 6 of exhibit 1 as exhibit 1. So you should never be admitting an exhibit as far as when you're labeling them exhibit 1A, exhibit 1B. It just needs to be exhibit 1. You also will be talking about neutral statements for the jury, but now you also will be discussing the standardized jury questionnaire that we send out to our jurors. And Judge Keenan will go more into that during his section. We'll talk about any ADA accommodations, any interpreter issues or special circumstances that the court needs to be aware of and that you may need the court's assistance with. Any known conflicts with the current trial date, such as if counsel have other trials that are scheduled during that time or scheduled to start close in time to the current trial date. Conflicts with witnesses. Oftentimes, experts have been hired to testify during a specific time. So you want to have those conversations with the court and with opposing counsel regarding any conflicts that your expert witnesses or even lay witnesses may have about their availability. You should be discussing briefing schedules for motions in limine. Will those motions in limine be heard by the trial court at the beginning of the trial once the trial is assigned out for trial, or are they complex enough that you need them to be heard and ruled upon by your IC judge prior to the case being assigned out for trial? Many courts also ask, many of my colleagues and I will ask that you also provide a witness estimation form so that we know that if we expect that your trial will be 5 days in length, that given that there's basically 5 trial hours in every day, that you accurately have thought about how much time each of those witnesses is going to take so that you fit into the allotted time period for which you've requested your trial take. And generally, we also talk about allotted time periods for opening and closing statements, opening statements and closing arguments, excuse me. Now, one thing that you can be certain and be assured of is that at the conclusion of your pretrial conference, you will receive a written order issued by the court. My colleagues have worked very hard to create a standardized order that we all are trying to use so that you can become comfortable with the format. There's one order which I'll show you briefly at the end of this presentation that we all have adopted in some fashion or form with a few tweaks here and there. Lastly, before we move on, I just want to reiterate how important it is that prior to your pretrial conference, you've thought about the length of the trial and what you will need as far as your trial time, because this truly makes a difference in whether or not your assigned judge can possibly keep your case or it will need to be brokered out to another judge. Considerations in this virtual format. that you need to be aware of? Well, now we also have to talk about what type of format the trial is going to take in. Will everyone appear by Zoom? Will it just be the jurors, but counsel and the court be in the courtroom, or something else? Typically, you can expect that your trial judge and their staff will be in the actual physical courtroom in order to comply with the open courts doctrine. However, from time to time, we've had to make exceptions to this because of the COVID pandemic. But generally speaking, your court staff, the judge and their staff will be in the courtroom. But in an all virtual trial, counsel, witnesses, and all of the jurors will appear via a Zoom format. Also, it also depends on the case. In some situations, if there's interpreters or other considerations that need to be taken in, sometimes the court and the parties and their attorneys will appear, or maybe one side will appear. These are all things that need to be discussed during your pretrial conference. Then there are times that the parties do not have an agreement about whether or not the all virtual format will work for their trial. My colleagues and I, we have different ways of approaching this. Some of us request that the parties file a written motion for continuance in which each side is given an opportunity to brief the issue and the court makes a ruling. Others of us allow the parties to make arguments orally at the time of pretrial, and then the decision is made. Regardless of which way it happens, you can't expect that your trial judge, meaning your IC judge, the one that's seeing the pretrial conference, will enter an order with actual written findings and conclusions of law. Evidence. What format will the evidence take? Now, because we have gone to an all electronic format, you can expect and anticipate that the expectation is that all evidence will be submitted into our share file system and that you need not provide hard copies. But again, during your pretrial conversations with your IC judge, you'll discuss whether this will be the format that's used for all of the exhibits, or some will be electronic and some will be hard copies. Some courts prefer to have hard copies for their working file instead of the online system. Again, these are discussions that take place. Now, the technology piece. One of the things that also comes up during these pretrial conferences is just assuring that everyone is familiar with the Zoom format, what the expectations are. Have you talked to your clients, and is your firm set up to handle an all Zoom, have the bandwidth for participation? Is there someone that needs to have practice with this format before the actual trial date? One word of caution here, the court has limited resources for ability to actually have actual training sessions. That's why we've worked so hard to put a number of training videos on our website that you can use, such as this training video, to explain to you how to use some of the features and what the expectations are. You also can use the YouTube videos for Zoom itself and some of the unique features that Zoom has. So how will you know how to upload the evidence to our share file? I'm going to spend our last few minutes together discussing this point. Here, I've uploaded what you can expect when you go to our website. You can go to this website and we have plenty of videos here where you can find out information about what's going on and instructions. But included in your pretrial conference order that your judge will send you written are also instructions of uploading, how to upload your information to ShareFile. For our last few minutes, I'm quickly going to go through some tips on things that you may have questions about uploading information to ShareFile. First of all, what is ShareFile? It's a shared space where you can share electronic documents. It's just like any other format that you would see. If you've ever used something called Dropbox, it's very similar to that. You can upload pretty much anything up to it. You can play videos through it. Once it's uploaded, though, you need to be aware that you can't really delete it or modify, but no worries. If you make a mistake and you accidentally upload something or you make a mistake, it's okay. The clerk's office monitors what is referred to as the working file or the trial file, and then keeps a separate file that's the master file that only the clerk has access to, so that the record, the official record, which will be available once it goes up for appeal, is preserved. How do you get access to the share file? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to email the clerk's office at the DJA exhibit email address that it's included here. And you're just going to let them know what your case is, the name of the case, which side you represent, and that you are ready and need access to a share file folder. Behind the scenes, the clerk's office sets up that folder, gives you access to the things that you need for that specific folder, and then we'll send you a confirmation email that you now have access to this folder. Another helpful tip, training tip, is if you reach out to the clerk's office and it's getting closer to your trial date and you haven't heard back, don't be afraid to contact your calendar judge through the bailiff and let them know that you have not received access. Unfortunately, like every other organization, we're working with shortage of staff and budget cuts, and so sometimes things get lost, and we can assist by reaching out to the clerk's office to make sure that you get access in a timely fashion so that you can stay on track with the order that your judge would have given you for submission. Once you have access to it, it's just like any other type of situation where you drag something into a file. You're going to open that, your share file, you're going to open that case, you're going to drag your exhibit or document into that file, and then you're going to name it. Again, another reminding you from before, it is very important that you use the numbers that were given to you during the pretrial conference by your judge, that you label the exhibit by the exhibit number, followed by the name, and remember, you can use you can use numerals, but there cannot be a 1A, 1B, 1C, 2A, 2A. It's just exhibit 1, exhibit 2, exhibit 3, or exhibit 100, exhibit 101, so forth. Again, reminding you, naming conventions are very important for this process. Always start with the exhibit and then the name. Once all of the documents are uploaded, this is just to remind you that the clerk has the master copy, and then there's another copy for trial use that all the parties have. And once exhibits are admitted, the clerk takes the admitted exhibit and moves it to the clerk's master file during trial. One other tip that I want to remind you of, although all exhibits are uploaded to the share file, we still need, if you are planning to use a deposition, you still need to send, just like before, a sealed original deposition to your assigned trial judge. Your assigned trial judge. And typically, trial judges are assigned the Thursday before the Monday trial date, if it isn't placed on standby. And that is who you want to send your sealed deposition to. Do not upload what's meant to be the sealed deposition to the share file. This is just an example of what you're going to get as your Zoom procedures for pretrial and explanation on how to use the share file. And lastly, with our last couple of minutes, just want to point out some questions that you will want to cover once your case is assigned to trial. You can talk to your IC judge during pretrial conference, but often these issues that are discussed here are generally things that are better suited to talk once your case is assigned to your trial judge so that everyone understands the procedures of that particular court when it comes to these issues. Again, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to session 1 of this training module on pretrial conference. And if you haven't already, please be sure to tune in to part 2 of the training, where Judge Keenan will cover the jury selection, and parts 3 and 4, where Judge Williams will cover the jury management during trial and covering the remote trial itself. Again, thank you very much and good luck with your Zoom trial.